Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. As we heard at the top of the hour from Fox News on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, the border troubles continue. They continue to flood the zone. The president not happy with how things are going, so he's made a change in his lineup. Coming up, David Ray will join us from FAIR. We'll get his thoughts on that. By the way, today's Kevin Miller Cash code word is bike. The 6 a.m. hour is bike. Remember, listen at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., and 3 p.m. during Sean Hannity for your chance to win up to $5,000. Joining us now, David Ray, joining us from FAIR. David, good morning.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
Well, I don't know. How are we doing when we take a look at this crazy system where we have the devious little libs getting in the way of us enforcing laws? You've got judges saying the president can't enforce the border. This is crazy.
Right. The president really is in a corner here. We've got Congress that is sitting by with the ability, probably in a 10-minute period, if they pulled Republicans and Democrats together and locked them in a room, they could come up with, a compromise on these asylum policies that would close these loopholes and end this mass rush to the border. They're not doing it. We have the president trying various initiatives to try to contain the problem since, there's only so much you can do about it legally since Congress isn't acting, and the courts seem to be heading him off at every pass. So I think what the president is trying to do is kind of a last-ditch effort. He's going to shake up the people in charge a little bit, try a different approach, and see. Congress can't mess with who he hires and what teams he puts together, and the courts can't either. And so this is his last-ditch effort to try to get some sort of handle on this problem. Unfortunately, the politics of this are not looking good. Think about it. You've got President Trump, whose keystone initiative was, I'm going to get control of the border. He stepped into the job, and that's exactly what happened. The numbers started going down, and it looked like, all we need is some tough talk in charge, and people will correspondingly stop coming to the U.S., and now it's been the exact opposite. In 2014, for example, when President Obama declared a humanitarian crisis at the border, we had 57,000 apprehensions in March of 2014. By comparison, in this March of 2019, we had over 100,000. So it's twice the size of the Obama problem, and zero help from anybody on Capitol Hill or in the courts in his trying to manage, trying to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, so to speak.
David Ray joining us from FAIR. So what's the solution? Is there one?
Well, the solution, he's going to have to get a new team together. We have a lot of smart people in Washington who can think of new ways to go around this. He's going to have to fight these decisions in court. He had there was an initiative that was ready to go full scale where they were taking the problem with the rush to the border is that everyone is coming in claiming political asylum, knowing that if they have a child with them, they're going to be admitted into the country. There's a 1 million case backlog ahead of them, and so they're going to be released into the United States in a matter of days, and then they disappear. So that's the scam. So Trump said, okay, fine. When you ask for political asylum, instead of being released into the United States, you are going to be held in Mexico until your case comes up, and then we'll give you your case. And if you're admitted by a judge who's heard the case as to why you are fleeing political persecution at your home country, which very few of these people actually are, then we will admit you. The courts have stopped him on that one. So now they have to just keep bringing them in and admitting them. And as long, we have smuggling rings out there who are telling people in Central America, now's the time before they get the laws closed, before they can do anything to impede your access to the United States. Why wait in line? Why wait 2 to 3 years for a green card? You can get in today. It's immigration on demand. And so it's created a real bad situation for the president, a worse situation for America, because frankly, Kevin, we don't know who these people are. I mean, they're coming in, they're asking for political asylum. They're clearly not fleeing political persecution at the hands of their governments because they're coming. They just spent a month in Mexico. I mean, they're coming here for economic reasons. They want a job, which is fine, but you can apply to come here as a legal immigrant. You can wait your turn, and then you can come in. You know, there's no risking your kid's life. There's no, scary trip on the way to the United States. You come here as a legal immigrant. Everything's above the board. You're welcomed in at the front door through legal admission. But, why bother to wait when you can have what you want right now, immediate gratification?
David Ray joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We go back to this judge blocking the president's policy that would force asylum seekers to wait in Mexico for court hearings. It just seems that everything that the president's trying to do is getting foiled. You have people talking about the wall. They're flooding the zone. David, you've been doing this for quite some time with our friends from the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Is this the worst it's been?
This is the worst it's been in, probably since the turn of the century. I think we are projected to exceed 1 million apprehensions this year. We haven't hit numbers like that since 2006. I really honestly never thought I was going to see a day again when we got up to numbers like this. Let me just give you an example. There was an interview with Jay Johnson last week, who was the Department of Homeland Security the head of the Department of Homeland Security under Obama. And he said, if I would come into the office in the morning and my staff would tell me that we had 1,000 apprehensions the night before, it would ruin my entire day and people wouldn't come around me. So by comparison, just over the course of 2 days last week, we had 12,000 people apprehended at the border. So that would have put Jay Johnson in a bad mood for probably about a month. Yeah, this is the worst that we've seen in recent history. The scary thing is there's no sign of abatement. Congress is not getting involved. The Democrats, if you're a Democrat and you want to embarrass the president, why would you do anything to help him out on this? Even if it is endangering the American public, it's making a really good political issue against somebody that you hate and somebody who you want to beat in 2020. So I don't see the Democrats running to his assistance on this. And it's created a hazardous situation for the American public because, like I said, we don't know anything about these folks. They haven't been screened. There hasn't been a background check done on them in their country. They're flooding in. We don't even have detention space to hold them. They're simply this is like catch and release on steroids. And, so it's bad for the American people, but it's also bad for the immigrants because instead of coming in through the legal process, we have people using human smugglers to get to the United States. We've had 2 young children. I think both of them were Guatemalan children under the age of 7 or 8 who died shortly after entering the United States because it's a dangerous trip. They were dehydrated and they were ill, and children are frail. And both of these children died. So parents are taking unnecessary risks, but they know if they have a child in tow that they can't be detained for more than 20 days. So
sure.
They know the system, they know how to play it, and they're getting their way. So what's going to stop it?
All right, hold on, David. David Ray joining us, our great friend, the Ohio State Buckeye here in Idaho.
Yeah.
KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. But I think the point being, and David, you at FAIR understand this, you cover it, you've exposed this. This all goes back to former President Obama coming up with this solution that has opened the floodgates where instead of in the past, if they came in illegally, they would be detained, this asylum loophole. And a lot of people probably aren't familiar with what this really caused in the old days, that if you were persecuted, let's say you were from the old Soviet Union or the Middle East or something, you were seeking asylum because you were being persecuted. All of a sudden, during the Obama years, we come up with people from Mexico and Central America claiming asylum. And the burden is on us to prove that they're not seeking asylum because of fears instead of them providing it to us. Is that right?
Well, yeah. So what we have is when they first put together the asylum laws, they thought they would get like $5,000 or 5,000 applications a year and it would be from ballerinas from the former Soviet Union and East Bloc country and stuff like that. People who were in the United States and then said, if I go back home, I'm going to be persecuted by my government. What it's done is turned into, and these are people who came from very repressive regimes. What it's turned into is basically a way to sidestep U.S. immigration laws to gain illegal immediate entry into the United States, and it's because of loopholes that have kind of come into being in the last 20 years. One of them called the Flores Agreement, which says that you can't hold a child for more than 20 days, even if they're with their parents. There's a trafficking bill called the TVPRA, which says any child that comes in other than from Canada or Mexico must be assumed to be a victim of child trafficking. So it makes it nearly impossible to send a foreign child home without a lengthy court process. So that's how we've ended up with all these MS-13 kids. So several of these loopholes and these legal agreements have really tied the hands of the administration. Now, these things could all be overridden by Congress, but I don't see anybody, the Republicans tried to do it when they had a majority in the House. Paul Ryan really didn't lean into the bill too hard, so we couldn't even get it past the House, although it came fairly close. And the Democrats have absolutely no appetite right now for doing anything immigration-wise to help out the president because, as I said, they're humiliating him.
And that's where it is. So much for security. Yep. Finally, David Ray joining us from FAIR. Like LeBron James, the pride of Akron, Ohio.
Soon to be in Akron. I'm heading back tomorrow.
All right. A-Town Rowdy. However, there's a lot of danger going on here that the media doesn't report, that FAIR objectively takes a look at when we're talking about crime and people that have been caught and released, that have been here illegally, that shouldn't be in the country, that are criminals, that continue to harm Americans.
Absolutely. That's what I said, is that we have the problem with these asylum claimants is that since we can't even hold them for more than a couple of days, since our detention facilities are packed, we're letting these folks go on their own recognizance with a court date, that could be 2 years away, and we know really absolutely nothing about them. Do they have a criminal record? Have they escaped from a detention center? Did the kid that they arrive with, are they actually related to that child, or are they using that kid as a ploy? I mean, we've had many instances where these kids are being kidnapped so that somebody can come in and say, yes, this is, my 6-month-old daughter, and we're asking for political asylum in the U.S. And so then we have to do blood testing to show that there's actually a genetic link, because we know many of these kids are being kidnapped. We have kids who are coming in with parents. As soon as the parents are allowed in, then the kid is sent back to Mexico to come in with another adult. And then once they get into the country, you've heard the stories of the angel moms and dads. Once these folks, most of them, good 30 to 40% of them won't even file their paperwork for political asylum. Another 30 to 40% won't go to their court dates. So they end up living in our country as illegal immigrants, and then they end up some of them commit heinous crimes that cost the lives of innocent Americans. And we hear the stories from the angel moms and dads. It's not a story that, not a way to come to America, not something that should be happening, but it's something that we are kind of up against a brick wall now and trying to stop.
And that's where FAIR comes in. How can people support you, David Ray?
Well, check us out on the web. We're at fairus.org, Federation for American Immigration Reform on Facebook, or hashtag Fair Immigration on Twitter. We're the nation's oldest and largest immigration reform organization. We've been fighting for cracking down on illegal immigration and reforming legal immigration for 40 years now. We're located right on Capitol Hill. I'm up to my knees in the swamp every day fighting the good fight. And honestly, Kevin, I don't know how bad things could be if FAIR wasn't there. Thank God we are there to keep some pressure on the government when we can and keep the American public apprised of what's going on so that when the opportunity arises and there's a chance to strike, we can strike.
David Ray, take care. Enjoy Akron.
You bet. Always. Have a great day, Kevin. Always good to be with you, my friend.
And you, brother. Take care now. All right, our great friend David Ray joining us. Coming up next, your thoughts on the border situation. That's number one. Our top story of the day, the Attorney General will be testifying before Congress. Look for him to get grilled. But William Barr is not nobody's patsy. I think that there'll be some compelling clips that Sean will be talking about this afternoon with Sean Hannity. Kevin Miller here with you. I'm very leery about talking about this topic, about sharing this with you. But does anybody care about this initiative bill? Apparently 4 bills have been reintroduced. Where is the repeal of the grocery tax? We've got a lot to get started on, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And here we go. Let's see what we can stir up today. So they're back at it again. There is something amiss here with this initiative bill. You have many people concerned about it. You have the Democrats concerned about it. You have many grassroots Republicans concerned about it, saying that this is bad news. Well, if you missed it yesterday, 4 new bills, initiative bills, have been brought back to the floor of the House. Something is going on here, and somebody, whether it's Governor Little, whether it's the Senate, whether it's the House, basically looking at making it a tougher requirement for people to get an initiative on the ballot. And for me, I think this is a good deal. Why? I like what Senator Gross says. Senator Gross said, look, we don't want this place becoming like California. We don't want this place becoming like Oregon, right? So here we'll start off with Representative Brooke Green of Boise, very upset about this. Took to the floor yesterday to say this. Do we have it? Let's take a listen.
Each one of these bills is pretty significant. It certainly changes the way in which people can participate in the initiative process, and we're telling them point blank, we don't want you at the table. We don't want you part of this conversation, and it's disheartening to see this is the way in which we're creating laws.
So you have Brooke Green, a Democrat, coming out against these bills. You have many grassroots conservative Republicans coming out against these bills. You have the governor vetoing the latest bill, and yet you have the House bringing back this bill. Before we get to the details of this and get your phone calls, let's get you to work safely and on time. It's wet in the Treasure Valley. We don't have to worry about you. It's just those other crazies, right? We love our crazies. KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. And let's continue on. So here we have our friends from Channel 7 breaking this down. We've got the House Committee okaying 4 ballot initiative bills. And do most of us really care? Or is this going to impact our lives? This is getting much more attention than Medicaid expansion, much more attention than the repeal of the grocery tax, much more attention than the rights of Idaho citizens 18 to 20. Thanks, Governor Little, for signing that legislation. Something's going on here.
House State Affairs Committee will come to order.
In the House State Affairs Committee on Monday morning, 4 bills that sounded awfully similar to a previous bill were introduced.
You look through these 4 S's that are in front of you, they should look fairly familiar.
They all have to do with the voter initiative process. One bill would require groups to have a fiscal impact of their initiative and to find a funding source. Another would raise the signature requirement from 6% of registered voters to 10. The other 2 would decrease the time from 18 months to 9 and then require groups to gather signatures from 2/3 of the legislative districts. When combined, they do the same thing as House Bill 296.
It's not a repeat. There's different parts here, and different people like different parts of that bill, and it made it through both bodies.
Democrats argued against the bill, saying they were a waste of time since the governor said he planned to veto 296.
The appropriate process is to override the governor's veto. It's not to pass the same bill again.
Representative John Gannon of Boise says there's no reason to change the initiative process since it isn't broken.
There's only been 15 initiatives passed since 1932. It's not been abused.
But supporters like Representative Christy Zito say these bills are to ensure that rural voices are heard.
I don't see us as tightening the initiative process. How I feel what this does is it basically expands the initiative process to include more people.
Now, during the meeting, the committee had to take a break to make sure they weren't breaking the rules on reintroducing the same legislation that's been killed already. They had a clerk research it to make sure everything was okay.
It wasn't something flippant. She did some research in that time that we were out and then came back and said we're within reason of Masons. There's no reason we couldn't go forward with these.
But critics say breaking apart a bill that will be vetoed isn't the way they should introduce new laws.
I think there's going to be a continual objection to this entire proceeding. You'll hear that on the House floor. I'm sure you'll hear it in the Senate if it gets that far.
There we have it from our friends at Channel 7. But at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, this is really real-life drama. On one hand, you have Senator Groh, who introduced, what was it, 1159. It made it through the Senate, made it through the House. Then Governor Little vetoes it. Were there outside forces influencing the governor? And if so, were they from out of state? Now, you had people protesting. Maybe there were tons of phone calls. Maybe the governor was overwhelmed by phone calls. But you elect a governor to lead. And, again, Governor Little, great guy. He doesn't have a problem explaining himself. Hopefully we'll get him on, and we'll hear what he has to say about it. But more importantly, what's all this brouhaha over this bill? If there have only been 15 initiatives passed in the law since, 32, what the heck is going on here? And why do you have, on one hand, the Democrats against it? You have fiery, conservative, liberty-minded folks against it. You have our great friend, Representative Zito, who is for it. You can't question her conservative credentials. And you have the establishment for it. I go back to what Senator Groh said. You missed it. Basically, Senator Groh said, we don't want this to become Oregon or California. And how much of the influence to veto this bill impacted the governor came from out of state? Oh, it's a drama worth listening all morning long. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. And coming up, not only we're going to talk about this bill, this initiative bill, we urge you to, when you see your lawmakers, ask them, why aren't they repealing the state's repressive grocery tax and Medicaid expansion? We'll continue to cover those issues locally. Plus, one senator running for president has introduced something he calls the reparations bill. We'll tell you about that. Get your calls next. First, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM is your home for Fox News on the radio. That means we get to talk exclusively to Rachel Sutherland, live from Capitol Hill right now. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
Well, it's not a good morning for the Iranians, is it?
Well, they're not happy with this designation of the Iran Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. This is the first time the United States has done this, basically call another nation's military a terrorist group. And they were responding pretty forcefully yesterday, actually calling it a gift to Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, who's up for re-election. So they see this as a political move. The Trump administration sees it differently. That Iran, they say, is the largest state sponsor of terror around the world. But at one point yesterday, the foreign minister of Iran was calling on President Rouhani to designate U.S. troops in the area as terrorists. So that definitely brings things to a new level.
Dean, this has been going on for quite some time since Donald Trump took office. How is his policy different from that of his predecessor?
Very different. You remember that former President Obama worked to negotiate the Iran nuclear deal with several other countries. At the time, there was a lot of criticism about that. And when then candidate Trump was running, he vowed to rip it up because he felt like it would not stop Iran from getting nukes in the long run. That would simply delay their program. So, and then he made good on his promise about a year ago, almost a year ago. He announced the U.S. was withdrawing from the deal and that there would be sanctions slapped back on Iran. So there's been this, increasing level of tension between the nations ever since the president took office. But a lot of people want to see the president being harder on Iran. At the same time, there were some within the Pentagon and the CIA who were concerned about the designation for the very reason spelled out that Iran may retaliate. There are soldiers obviously in Afghanistan and around the area, Syria, where Iran has been active, where their lives could be in danger.
Yes, and obviously that situation in that area is going to be tough, and it continues to be tough and has been for many years. What's the anticipation of the Attorney General testifying today?
Oh, that's what everybody is going to be watching. We're getting ready to have a lot of team coverage on this today. William Barr going before a House subcommittee. Now, this was an already scheduled committee, but you know how it is with these hearings, and that since it's the first time he'll appear on the Hill since the release of this 4-page summary of the Mueller report, expect a lot of questions, expect a lot of grilling of the Attorney General on his handling of this, on the fact that he decided to release this 4-page summary, for lack of a better word, and how he came to do that, and how he came to clear the president of any kind of obstruction of justice. They will also ask him about plans to release the full report, redactions, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone is flocking to the Hill today to see this hearing.
Rachel, anything else we should be looking out for? It changes day to day. Secret Service guy getting fired, Christian Gillibrand. Not Christian Gillibrand.
Gilson, yeah. She made a brief statement to reporters yesterday about leaving the Homeland Security Department. Sounded very positive. Thank the president again for the opportunity to serve at DHS. She is going to be replaced by McAleenan, who is at the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in an acting capacity. So this will, again, eventually somebody will be nominated to lead the Homeland Security Department permanently, but that will have to ensure a confirmation process. There seems to be a lot of acting heads of organizations within the Trump administration, but in this case, Kevin McAleenan will step in, I believe, as soon as tomorrow.
Rachel Sutherland, we appreciate you. We know you're very busy, so thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, Rachel Sutherland joining us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you're just waking up, again, without getting too much in the weeds, you've got the House introducing 4 bills that bring back the initiative process, making it a little tougher. You have people on the right, the liberty-minded folks, upset. You have Representative Zito saying this helps rural Idaho. You have Senator Groh, who introduced the first one before it was vetoed by Governor Little, saying he's worried about this place becoming Oregon and California. I agree. Again, here's what Representative Brooke Green had to say.
Each one of these bills is pretty significant. It certainly changes the way in which people can participate in the initiative process, and we're telling them point blank, we don't want you at the table. We don't want you part of this conversation. And it's disheartening to see this is the way in which we're creating laws.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I worry about the big money folks coming in, and I wonder if the governor was pressured by outside forces. Let's say, hypothetically, the governor received thousands of phone calls. How many of those came from out of state? And really, just because somebody, well, again, you want a governor who listens. So I guess Governor Little will have to answer that question if someone has the intestinal fortitude to ask it. Hank in Boise, thank you for your patience. You're on with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
The whole mess is created by the fact that Governor Brad Little shows little signs of providing leadership. In other words, there's some reasons why I didn't support his candidacy and is coming forward to display right now. He is very pliable to pressure. That was what I feared, and he's showing every sign of it. Everything that I thought that he was going to be, he's become, and I wish that I wasn't right on this. He could have stopped the whole mess on the various bills on the initiatives by making public what he would sign and what he wouldn't sign, or what he would and wouldn't support. It would stop the waste of time. Or clarify the situation of what could be passed and not passed. By hiding behind his desk in the office, he's in a sense provided the confusion on this. And as far as the grocery tax is concerned, the reason why it's not going to go anywhere is because Brad talked on both sides of his mouth on this. He came out campaigning for repeal, and the reason what stops repeal is because he has made his leadership. He's made his sign that he will oppose any raising of the grocery tax. In other words, Little might say one thing to the public, but behind the scenes he says something else. That's another aspect of this governorship that I'm not necessarily jumping up and down about. So I think that's your answer to your grocery tax. Little is the key to the situation. He could, if he said that he approved the grocery tax repeal, I think you'd get action going forth in the Idaho legislature. It's his call, but when it comes to when the trumpeter needs to be sounding some signs of leadership, he seems to kind of disappear in the brushes. He's like an establishment Republican, which I always get.
But it's interesting though. When you take a look at this, Senator Groh, I'm sure you would consider him establishment. You have the establishment supporting this bill. They run it through, and then all of a sudden, boom, the governor vetoes it. It's almost like the governor did an end around on him.
Well, he could have spared them. Same thing by indicating in advance what he would do on it. But the fact that he chose to keep his cards hidden and what he was going to do, in a sense, has created the confusion and the waste of time up at the legislature. He, for better or for worse, whether he was for it or against it, he should have made what he would accept and what he wouldn't accept clear in the first place. In other words, show some leadership, Mr. Brad Little, instead of hiding behind.
Hank, you're an astute observer. What's this thing really about?
I mean, as far as the initiative, I think the fear is the passage of the mayor. I think that the big specter is that there's a very good possibility that we would get an initiative that would legalize marijuana. I think that's what's really driving this thing with a lot of people.
It's on the way because they're launching one for medical marijuana under the old rules. It won't take effect, so they're in already with this medical marijuana. So the door is open.
Well, the door is open, and if you noted, the pattern is the states, when they adopted the medical marijuana, it isn't too long before they have full legalization. That was Oregon's route, was to go first to the legal medical marijuana and then go for the other. And there's every sign that in the population centers, at least in Boise and Ada County, that they would in the state that they would probably provide the margin for passage. That's why it's important in the initiative process, not necessarily increasing the overall numbers. I think it's important to have as many counties having to produce a certain amount of to get play throughout the state. That would be my approach to it, would be to say, all right, we won't necessarily increase the number of things, but you're going to have the same percentage across every county or every legislative district in the state so that we have the full state. Rural Idaho isn't being inundated by the Boise culture to be forced to have to accept legalization of marijuana, let's say in the rural areas, just because Boise wants it. That's the point I'm driving at.
No, I would agree with you. And like I said, you have Senator Groh saying we don't want this place to become California or Oregon. And again, you'll never get this from the House and the Senate. The people that took the beatings, they sent it up to the governor's desk. I hear there were thousands of phone calls. That's what my sources are saying. I don't know. That's speculation on my part. I don't know why he just didn't put it over the goal line, although in his defense, he said that he was worried about lawsuits.
Well, he can say that, but the point of it is I think he would have done better to clarify what he would accept and what he wouldn't up front. And he hasn't done that. And that's what's creating the confusion and the chaos.
Well, apparently powerful forces want this bill because they've reintroduced it, 4 of them now.
Well, I think that Zito, I think the fact that Zito support it shows you that the concerns about rural Idaho, that basically that the Boise culture is going to be extended to them. That's what they're fearful. I think that's what's driving this.
I would agree with that, Hank. Thank you for the call. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Coming up next, a serious presidential candidate has introduced a bill that would address reparations. Taxpayers would pay for reparations. We'll tell you about it, plus get your phone calls. Back to this initiative bill as well. There's something going on here that the public is not aware of. Look, I'd much rather be talking about the repeal of the grocery tax, a cap on the expansion of Medicaid spending. But this bill, something is amiss that's not getting a lot of attention. And one more time from Representative Brooke Green, again, a Democrat. You have the Democrats that are not in favor of this bill, liberty-minded folks that are not in favor of this bill. Yet you have, perhaps, with Representative Zito and Senator Groh, a partnership between conservative members of the House and so-called establishment members in the Senate.
Is pretty significant. It certainly changes the way in which people can participate in the initiative process, and we're telling them point blank, we don't want you at the table. We don't want you part of this conversation, and it's disheartening to see this is the way in which we're creating laws. Each one of
I don't know about that. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio time is 6:49. Coming up next, don't forget Glenn Beck after us. That's a ways away. You're listening to Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio.
We have never been bereft of bigotry and hatred and demagoguery in our country. Never, ever been without it. And people who want to try to create some kind of Disneyland history of our country demean the greatness of this country when they don't point to the wretchedness and the pain that we all had to overcome.
Yeah, there we have it. Senator Cory Booker, he wants to be the new Barack Obama. He's running for president, senator from New Jersey. Remember, he's the guy with the Spartacus moment. I am Spartacus. Okay, some people, when it comes to religion, and you've heard the term Catholic guilt, and I find myself doing this all the time, and of course we all choose to be victims in America today, where you just guilt people and you feel guilty. So if I get this right, Cory Booker says that unless you feel bad about America's past, and unless you feel bad that you've been victimized, and apparently I guess white people have been victimized as well, or maybe they haven't, they're just the people that are inflicting the pain on others, that you can't really appreciate the greatness of America. I don't think I agree with that logic. I know I don't. It just seems, again, bad. But here's the skinny, true believers. Democratic presidential hopeful Cory Booker has introduced a bill to study possible reparations for descendants of slavery. The New Jersey senator said Monday his bill addresses head-on the persistence of racism, white supremacy, and implicit racial bias in our country. Booker promises it will bring together the best minds to study the issue and propose solutions that will finally begin to right the economic scales of past harms and make sure that we are a country where dignity and humanity is affirmed. By the way, this is from our friends at Fox News. Kyle Korver, now plays for the Jazz, just wrote a piece in the Players Tribune, which is where the sports guys write stuff or have their ghostwriters write them, saying that he is a benefit of white privilege. Man, folks, this is not good. It is not bringing us together. And Kyle Korver is being hailed as a person for outing himself as being privileged. I think that Kyle Korver doesn't have white privilege. I mean, he's competing with people in the NBA that are at his level or superior, and he thrives. You know, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but here you have people saying that there is wrong. How much more can we self-inflict on ourselves? If you've never been around Ronald Reagan, watching him on something in the past the old people called the television, YouTube Reagan, white, black, it didn't matter. He brought us all together. That's the vision of Dr. King, not of Senator Booker. And quite frankly, with all due respect, not Kyle Korver either. We don't need reparations. That has no meaning in our lives today. And when we talk about people having advantages, that's more socioeconomic than race. Man, again, you take a look at what the remnants of what Barack Obama did to us, and we've got a long way to go to get back to can't we all just get along? KIDO Talk Radio time, 6:58 with Kevin Miller in the morning. Let's get you to work safely and on time on this wet, rainy day. Good morning, Dave.